9.1 Friends Forever.
Hi, Tazy or Anastasia. It's great to be in touch again. The wonder of social media, sometimes. How could anybody forget a name like yours? Crazy Tazy Jones. And now you're a Peabody. You and I were friends from the start. We used to sit next to each other in class, but then the teachers made us sit apart because we were always giggling and whispering. Do you remember how we would go back to your house after school and listen to music for hours on end? CDs in those days. We both loved Oasis, but we'd argue endlessly about who was better, Liam or Noel. Oh, and we also used to listen to the Spice Girls, but in secret, because they were so uncool. Then there was that time we painted your bike bright pink. Then we'd go cycling round town on it, and we would never wear our helmets. Your dad was furious, but we didn't care. I meet up with Polly and Tina from time to time. They're both married with kids, and like us, balancing work and home life. Polly's the same as ever, a rotten timekeeper. She'll always arrive late and rush in, full of apologies. It would be so great if you could join us. In the meantime, keep on keeping in touch. It's great to catch up. Love, Nikki. P.S. I can't get used to calling you Anastasia Peabody. To me, you'll always be Crazy Tazy Jones.
9.2 Listen and repeat. 1,
We used to sit next to each other.
2,
We were always giggling and whispering.
3,
We'd go back to your house.
4,
We'd go cycling round town.
5,
I can't get used to calling you Anastasia.
6,
She'll always arrive late.
9.3 What are they like? 1,
My flatmate is the untidiest person in the whole world. She's always leaving her things around the place and her room looks like a rubbish dump.
2,
My boyfriend is insanely jealous. He'll lose his temper if he sees me just talking to any other guy.
3,
Freddie is just the coolest guy I know. He wears a cap and sunglasses all the time, even in the house. Mum says he's just silly.
4,
My dog Bruno was my best friend. We used to go everywhere together. He'd even sleep by my bed.
5,
Your problem is you're self-obsessed. You're always talking about yourself, and you'll walk away if the subject moves to someone else.
6,
My mum really gets on my nerves. She's always criticising me and my friends.
7,
But my grandma was so sweet. She would always stand up for me when Mum got angry. She used to say, "You're only young once."
8,
My grandpa hated all modern technology. He'd say it was all too complicated for him, and he wouldn't use the iPad we bought him. He just used to watch his old TV.
9.4 When I was a boy.
When I was a boy, we lived in a village in the heart of the countryside, and I used to like going for long walks, especially in summer. I'd get up early in the morning without waking my parents. We used to have a dog called Bob, and he and I would creep out of the house and down the lane. Bob and I would climb the hills together while the rest of the world was sleeping. Once I walked for nearly 20 miles, and my parents got very worried. I used to love those days, so innocent, so carefree. I went back there last year, but it wasn't the same.
9.5 Getting used to. 1,
You don't like your new teacher, do you?
Not a lot, but we're getting used to her. She's not so bad.
2.
How can you get up at 5 o'clock every morning?
No problem. I'm used to it now. I've been doing it for years.
3.
How come you know New York so well?
I used to live there. I used to work in downtown Manhattan.
4.
How are you finding your new job?
Difficult, but I'm getting used to it bit by bit. It's challenging, but I like it.
5.
Do you still have any CDs?
No, I used to have loads, but not anymore. I stream all my music.
6.
Do you get on well with your sister?
Well, we didn't used to, but now we're really close. We tell each other everything.
7.
You two argue so much. How can you live together?
After 20 years, we're used to each other. It's just the way we are. Every marriage is different.
9.6. Me and my parents. 1. Catherine.
I have very fond memories of my childhood. To me, it represented security. We used to do a lot together as a family. I remember going on walks and having picnics and going for car rides on a Sunday afternoon. Every Friday when my dad came home, he'd bring us each a treat, usually just something little. Once he bought me a necklace with a heart. Just cheap, but I loved it. My mother used to say he was spoiling us, but why not? He loved us.
2. Michael.
It was my dad who used to drive me mad. He was always telling me to have my hair cut and dress more smartly. My mum was much more lenient. She never really minded how I dressed. But she would get angry when I picked up food before she'd put it on the table. "Get your hands off," she'd say. But I was always so hungry. I had such a big appetite for such a small, weedy child. Then when I was 16, I suddenly shot up. I'm 6'5" now.
3. Johnny.
My mum was always nagging me, telling me to get off the computer, turn off the TV, pick up my things, do my homework. She'd keep on, and then she'd be all put out when I'd shut myself away in my room. I just needed some peace and quiet each day. She just didn't realise how hard it was for me at school. You see, I was bullied and I never told Mum and Dad. We didn't talk much in our family. My wife is always asking me questions about my childhood, but I won't talk about it.
4. Gillian.
I got on very well with my mother. She was my best friend. Still is. We had to get on, really. You see, my dad left when I was 3. I used to tell her everything. Well, nearly everything. And she talked to me very openly too. Sometimes she'd say to me, "Don't go to school today. Stay with me." And we'd go out shopping or something like that. It's a wonder I had any education at all, the number of days I missed from school.
9.7. An early memory of school.
Some of my clearest and earliest memories are of my first school. So I'd like to share a memory about that. A memory that still upsets me after all these years. I was 5 years old and had just started school. It was quite a long way from my house and there were no school buses, so I had to walk. My sister, who's 11 years older than me, went to the big school, which was next to mine, so my mum sometimes asked her to take me to school. She was not keen to do this. She had no time for a small, irritating sister dragging along behind her. She liked to meet up with her cool friends. And what's more, because her school day started later than mine, she was happy to dawdle and chat. She refused to hurry to get me there on time. I was always an anxious child, and I would tug at her sleeve and fret about being late. She'd just shake me off. Anyway, one day was particularly bad. It was pouring with rain, and we splashed through puddles as we walked. And my sister was moaning all the time about how the rain was ruining her hair because she was hoping to meet a certain boy on the way. On that day, he didn't materialise, and this put her in a very bad mood. I was wearing my new red welly boots, and they were really difficult to pull on and off. I was full of fear Miss Marks, my teacher, would kill me if I was late again. Finally, we got there, and my sister ran off, leaving me to cope with the wellies. The cloakroom was empty, and I sat tearfully on the bench, tugging at the wretched boots. I put on my indoor shoes and crept into the back of the classroom. I was very late and very scared. The other kids were making mosaic pictures with lots of different coloured bits of sticky paper. I'd been so looking forward to doing this. Art was my best subject. I'd planned to do a beautiful portrait of my black and white cat. Miss Marks called across the room, "Elizabeth, late again." I hung my head. "You'll just have to sit in the corner and do a jigsaw." So I did, silently weeping and cursing my sister. I never did make that picture of my cat. To this day, my sister insists she can't remember anything about this. However, I believe it's the reason I have such a problem with lateness. I always arrive on time.
9.8. A teacher to remember. 1. Sean.
Funnily enough, the teacher I'll never forget is my Latin and Greek teacher. You may think they're dry subjects, dead languages, but Mr. Lang, the teacher, somehow used to make these dead languages seem dead easy. He looked the part. He was kind of traditional looking, quite formal and serious. He'd always wear a dark green or dark brown suit, and he had a long black moustache. He'd been at the school over 20 years, so he must have been in his 50s, I suppose. You'd think that everything about him was boring and serious, because he never smiled or laughed, never. But somehow he was clear, interesting and entertaining. There were jokes hidden in his words if you listened carefully. And we all did. He had a razor-sharp wit. Oh, I passed my exams, but didn't study Latin or Greek at university. But I did study philosophy, and that was a direct result of learning about the great philosophers, Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato, from Mr. Lang.
2. Samantha.
My most memorable teacher. I think that would be Mrs. Chapman. I was about 13 or 14, and she was our English and drama teacher. She was short and a bit plump, dumpy in fact, with mousy brown hair. She looked like everybody's kind, middle-aged auntie, but she wasn't very kind. She had a big, loud voice, and she used to like to get us to act out the plays we were studying. And she'd shout, speak up, and think about the meaning of the words." But what I remember most about her is her ruler. She had this wooden ruler, and if anyone was looking sleepy or bored, she'd poke them on the shoulder with this ruler and shout, "Wake up, girl!" or boy. Then one day she spotted someone asleep, fast asleep and snoring at the back of the class. Mrs. Chapman was so furious. She slammed the ruler down on his desk and it broke in half. We were all scared stiff. She didn't throw the ruler away. After that, it was even sharper when she poked you in the back. Maybe her lessons helped me, though. I'm a barrister now, and when I have to speak in court, Mrs. Chapman's words ring in my ear. Speak up, speak clearly, girl.
3. Rupert.
I don't think I ever had a favourite teacher, but I had a least favourite teacher, and weirdly, he was probably the most successful teacher I ever had. You see, when I was at primary school, I was really good at maths. I could do it all. But when I went to secondary school, I had a succession of dismal maths teachers, and by the time I took my exams at 16, I was absolutely hopeless. I failed miserably. And I needed to pass maths to get into university, so I had to retake it. This time with a very different teacher, Mr. Biggs. He was very sarcastic, and it seemed to be his mission in life to embarrass his students, and me particularly, because I'd joined the class to do a resit. He was always getting me out to the front of the class to do sums on the board, and he'd sneer if I got it wrong, which was most of the time. I hated him with a passion, but actually, his explanations were crystal clear, and gradually, over the year, I improved. I got a really good pass in the end, and got into a good university. I have no idea how old he was, just old, but when you're 16, 35 seems old. I'd say he was probably in his late 30s, and big like his name, with a huge booming voice.
4. Charlotte.
Well, one teacher I'll never forget is Miss Wilkinson. She taught chemistry and biology. I didn't like her subjects much, probably because I wasn't much good at them. She seemed old to me, but she was probably just in her early 30s, and kind of tall and gangly. She drove this ancient Mini, and she always seemed too big for it. She had to crouch over the steering wheel. Anyway, the reason I remember her so well is because I think she fell for my dad. Really? You see, he'd sometimes collect me from school, and one day, there she was in her Mini, and she couldn't get it to start. So, of course, my dad, being the lovely gentleman he was, helped her. Miss Wilkinson was glowing with gratitude. "Oh, thank you, Mr. Wilson. So kind, so kind." She went all weak and wobbly, not at all like she was when she was yelling at us in class. And then every time he came to collect me after that, somehow Miss Wilkinson would appear, and she was always asking me about him. "How's your kind father, Charlotte?" "Just fine, Miss Wilkinson. He and my mum are going to Paris this weekend." I just made that up to see her reaction. My friends and I used to giggle about it. When I mentioned it to my dad, he just laughed and said, "Oh, don't be silly, Charlotte. Nobody would fancy an old bore like me." But my mum raised an eyebrow.
9.9. Write the word you hear. 1,
Where?
2,
Nose.
3,
Wood.
4,
War.
5.
Through.
9.10. Homonyms. 1,
Grandma's leaving now. Come and wave goodbye.
He was swept out to sea by a freak wave, but he survived.
2,
Oh dear, we have a flat tyre and no spare wheel.
I'm renting a flat near where I work.
3,
What's today's date?
The 3rd.
I've got a date tonight. I'm going out with Carl.
4,
He goes to the gym every day. He's very fit.
The trousers are too small. They don't fit you at all.
5.
It's not fair. Everyone else is allowed to stay out till midnight.
She has beautiful fair hair and blue eyes.
9.11. Children's jokes. 1.
Why will you never starve in the desert? Because of the sandwiches there.
2.
Why is Sunday the strongest day? Because the others are weekdays.
3.
Your battery's flat. That's why your car won't start.
Oh dear, what shape should it be?
4.
Waiter, what's wrong with this egg?
Don't ask me, sir. I only laid the table.
5.
What do you get when 5,000 strawberries try to go through a door at the same time?
I don't know. What do you get?
Strawberry jam.
6.
Waiter, this food tastes funny.
So why aren't you laughing?
7.
What do you give to a sick lemon? Lemonade!
8.
What did one toilet say to the other? You look a bit flushed.
9.
Why can't Cinderella play soccer? Because she's always running away from the ball.
9.12. Moans and groans. 1.
I could kick myself. As soon as I'd handed it in, I remembered what the answer was.
That's always so annoying. But do you think you've still passed?
2.
I went away to think about it, and when I went back, it had been sold. I'm gutted. I should have bought it there and then.
Oh, that's a shame. Didn't you ask if they had another one in stock?
3.
I don't believe it. All I get is message failed to send. Try again. So I try again, and guess what?
No joy. What a pain. Why don't you try phoning them instead?
4.
These instructions don't make any sense to me at all. If you can follow them, you're a genius.
Oh, well, don't ask me. This flat pack stuff is a nightmare. I had the same trouble with a coffee table.
5.
It's not fair. I'd been looking forward to curling up with a box set, and then my phone goes and rings.
You didn't have to answer it. Who was it? Anyone interesting?
6.
How many times do I have to tell you? Take them off before you come into the house.
Give me a break. I was in a hurry. Anyway, they're only a bit muddy.
7.
This is beyond a joke. You promised you'd deliver it Tuesday at the latest. Now you're saying next month.
I'm awfully sorry, sir. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do about it. It's out of my hands.
8.
What a waste of time. 10 minutes listening to ghastly music, punctuated by, all our lines are busy. Thank you for waiting.
I know, it drives me mad. But worse is when they say, this call is important to us, when it obviously isn't.